Okay, so good afternoon, participant number 5. So, maraming salamat sa pagbahagi, sa pag-join sa aking panaliksik sa research. Okay, sir, do you use translanguage in your classroom?
Yes.
Okay, kailan po kayo gumagamit ng translanguage sa classroom?
Especially during class discussions. Some other instances are, if I could remember it correctly, there are students answering me in Bisaya, no? During recitations.
During recitation?
Those were the common scenarios or
Do you
instances.
translanguage?
Yes.
Pero like, during your discussion, translanguage. But when do you use English, sir?
I actually use English, especially during class discussion when I discuss the topics, the presentation, and all the examples that I need to present to the class. But there are times, for example, that I see it fit to use, let's say, for example, Bisaya or Tagalog, to put emphasis, especially on the topic that being discussed.
Okay, thank you so much for question number 1. That's number 2. Sa iyong karanasan, in your experience, sir, ano yung mga positive and negative sa paggamit ng translanguaging sa iyo sa pag-improve sa communication skills? Like, bilang isang guro, nakakatulong ba ito sa pag-express mo lalo sa sarili mo kapag gumagamit ka ng translanguaging? Ano yung advantage at disadvantage kung nagtatanglish ka sa classroom?
Okay. One, for the advantage, it's, for me, I think it's,
As a teacher,
as a teacher, I think it's undeniable that using English as a medium, no, primary medium especially inside the classroom, is really helpful in improving our communication skills using English. However, there are times that, for example, when we use, let's say, Tagalog or Bisaya, for me, the advantage to that part is that you encourage students, especially those mga maulawon na mga estudyante, no, para bang they feel maybe they are intimidated if the teacher discussing is really into using English. So maybe for me, maybe there are some students na they need, let's say, parang a bit of adapting to the class, so that there are times that I start the discussion with Tagalog or Bisaya, and then I gradually move into using English.
Like, how do you see yourself? Like, gumagamit ka lagi ng Taglish sa classroom. How do you see yourself?
To be honest, I don't usually use Tagalog talaga.
Or shifting from one language to another?
Yes.
How do you see yourself?
In terms of shifting one language to another, I usually
How do you see
use
yourself?
English to Bisaya or Bisaya to English. However, I have experiences that there are students who do not understand Bisaya. Let's say, for example, there are some Maranao students who can understand Tagalog and English. So yun, nagiging English to Tagalog or Tagalog to English.
So you find it useful as a
Yes,
teacher?
yes.
So what if yung disadvantage ng translanguage, lang shifting to one language to another?
For me, no, one disadvantage that I think
As a teacher,
is
gumagamit ka ng Cebuano tapos English to Cebuano.
there are for me, there are students na maybe they think na ay okay lang pala talaga magbisaya kasi nagbibisaya rin si sir or yung teacher. So parang nano-normalize yung wag na lang ako mag-English kasi total yung English pwede namang sa essay or sa quiz yun. So gagamit na lang ako ng Bisaya or Tagalog during the discussion. For me, that's the disadvantage. No, and I cannot say to the class na yung talagang may strict policy inside the class na talagang mag-i-English kasi I sometimes discuss culture, practices. So there are topics talaga na very much relatable if we use our tawag dyan, Bisaya or Tagalog na languages.
So that's the advantage. Okay, so, maraming salamat, sir. Let's proceed to number 3. Like, when your student, when you ask question in English, tapos yung sagot niya Cebuano or for example Maranao or whatever, do you encourage to speak in their native language kahit yung tanong ay English?
Yes, there are times that I ask the student if he could use or speak in English, because I also want to encourage them to develop their communication skills, especially in using English.
Kung ang tanong ay English, encourage them to also speak in English.
Yes.
But what if your students will speak in vernacular? Pero yung tanong mo English, okay na yun sa'yo?
What I do, if I would answer that, no, if it's yes or no, the answer to that is yes. But what I do is that I ask follow-up questions so that they can, you know,
In what?
there are sometimes, for example, if I ask in English, then they replied in Bisaya or Tagalog. I ask, let's say, follow-up questions, then I ask them if they can cite or provide examples using English.
Using English.
Oo.
Okay. Now, sir, do you think using the use of translanguaging enhances the communication skills of the students?
For me, yes. As I have mentioned earlier, no, there are students talaga na they are shy. Maybe some are really very low in confidence, especially when using English. So, for me, no, I actually been in that phase in my life that I actually very hesitant in using English as a medium of communication because I fear that I might say something wrong grammatically or the way I express my ideas. So what I do, one of the things that I think could also help the students is to
shift from one language.
shift, yes, no? Tawag dyan. A mix of using two languages,
Yes.
2 or 3 languages.
Okay. Now, sir, what is your view of a teacher who uses English most of the time sa classroom? At ano yung impact sa mga estudyante? Kung lagi siya nag-in-English, ano yung impact sa mga estudyante in terms of student engagement or participation? Kung lagi nag-i-English ang teacher.
I think I have 2 adjectives for that. First is he or she might look intimidating because the way I see people who really use English most of the time are really, you know, intimidating because they have this fluent and the prowess in using English
Ano yung
language.
number 2 adjective?
Ayan. Number 2 is it's actually challenging.
Challenging.
Okay? Because if a student has the appetite, no, the mood for really
To
interact,
engage, or
engage, express himself or herself, and the goal of improving oneself in communication is actually a good thing because it would actually challenge the students to also use the same language.
What if the opposite, sir? How do you view a teacher who uses Bisaya most of the time? Ano yung effect din sa mga estudyante in terms of engagement and participation?
That's an interesting question because
How do you view kapag lagi nagbibisaya yung teacher? As ano yung epekto yun sa mga estudyante in terms of their participation?
I think there's an aspect na I can say that if you're a teacher and you always use Bisaya, and you just
In your vernacular?
rarely using English, I think there's disadvantages to that. For example, the students maybe would not challenge themselves or encourage themselves to actually improve in using English as a language inside the classroom, because they would think na ay it's okay because si ma'am or si sir nga nagabisaya, so magbisaya ra pud ko. Okay, and I also have had some multiple experiences that even in essays, answering exams are expressed in Bisaya,
Okay.
which I think should be in English because they're answering an exam or an essay question.
Okay, now let's mix it. How do you view a teacher who uses two languages sa classroom?
I think it's good because it's one way to actually encourage students to be engaged in the discussion is to actually make them feel comfortable that they can shift from using Bisaya or Tagalog to English or English to Tagalog, because that would actually encourage them to feel na hindi sila ini-intimidate. Because there are teachers na magaling mag-English pero hindi intimidating. Meron ding mga English teachers na English ng English to the point na natatakot ang students to express their ideas.
So, yung maganda kapag ito. Now, sir, what is your overview now about translanguaging? Anong masasabi mo sa kabuuan?
Maybe I could say very few opinion to that. So the use of translanguage or translanguaging, especially in class discussion, is actually very helpful because number one, by using English, you encourage students also to speak English, and by using the more relatable language to them, it actually for me tells or somehow implies that they can be comfortable and they can express their, let's say, their ideas that they can only express it by using Bisaya or Tagalog perhaps.
Ayan, maraming salamat sir sa iyong oras at panahon.